Olá pessoal, boa noite, sejam todos bem-vindos à quarta Semana Internacional de Empreendedorismo e Inovação da Univali. Eu sou o professor Gustavo Soares e hoje a gente está aqui terminando o dia de forma magistral, assim, fenomenal, com a nossa Conferência Internacional. A gente está recebendo aqui o nosso convidado, daqui a pouco a gente vai falar um pouquinho sobre ele, mas só para lembrar vocês que amanhã nós ainda temos aí muitos eventos para acontecer, né? Nós começamos amanhã, 9h30 da manhã, com uma fala do Igor Drude. Depois nós temos o professor Petrelli falando sobre User Experience. Depois do período da tarde, a gente vai falar sobre transformação digital. Muito legal, né? E de noite a gente acaba com o prêmio Univali de inovação. Let me try to speak in English because our guest speaks English and Spanish. I don't speak Spanish at all. Tom, no one can see you right now, actually, because I'm talking by myself. Right? I'm not crazy, guys, but I'm just explaining to Tom what I was talking about. I was telling them, Tom, that tomorrow we have 3 periods of events. 2 events in the morning, 1 in the afternoon. Afterwards at 7:30 Brazilian time, we will have the 5th Univali Innovation Prize that will,
Grant.
It will grant. Thank you very much, Claudia. You will grant a prize for the winner. There is a competition going on. So, guys, let me introduce to you my guests here tonight. There's Professor Claudia from Univali, Professora Cláudia da Univali, do PPGA e do PMPGIL. Já vou deixar ela se apresentar. And Tom, who will speak to us this night. Claudia, please introduce yourself.
Boa noite a todos, é um prazer estar aqui nesse evento que é tão importante para o futuro da nossa economia, né? Para o apoio aos nossos empresários e aqueles que querem empreender. Sou a professora Cláudia, trabalho já há muitos anos aqui na Univali, estou ligada ao curso de comércio exterior, ao módulo internacional, ao International Program Global Markets and Negotiations, e ao mestrado, programa de mestrado profissional em administração, internacionalização, gestão, internacionalização e logística, e ao programa de mestrado profissional em políticas públicas. Vou estar aqui hoje participando desse evento junto com meu querido amigo Tom, que tem uma experiência fantástica para compartilhar conosco, e desde já agradeço, Tom, pela tua participação.
Tom is here. Tom is here to talk to us about a life experience, right, Tom? Because
absolutely,
it's a changing experience, right? So, as this is a entrepreneurism event, I will let you introduce yourself.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Claudia. Thank you, Gustavo, for having me. Thank you, everyone who's watching, for being here and having the interest in listening to my experiences in terms of international entrepreneurship. Do you put the presentation, Gustavo, or shall I do that? Okay, good. In the first place, I'd like to say that it's indeed an amazing honor for me to be here, part of this great event, which I think is very important, that you stress so much the relevance of entrepreneurship. It is a key factor in the economy, absolutely. I totally agree with you, and I find it fantastic that you dedicate so much time to it, and that you give the good spirits and the good vibes to people to try this out. The strange thing maybe is that today I will share some experiences in which some things are not always going perfect, because that is also part of being an entrepreneur. We tend to think that the entrepreneurs, the successful ones, are the only ones, but that is of course not true. No, a lot of people have a lot of difficulties, and actually the majority of people who start a business have difficulties even getting past the first 2 years. No, I can talk about an experience of 20 years almost. So we passed those 2 years successfully. But even then, we had a very, very close experience with bankruptcy, as you see in the title of my presentation. Okay, this presentation, if you wish, I think it can be made available to all of you, but for the time being, so I'd like you simply to listen, and hopefully you can learn a few things as well, just as I had to learn a lot of lessons from this whole experience. No? Good. So international entrepreneurship, this means a number of things. Okay, it means that you try to develop a career, and for some people are lucky, they can take the fast ladder up to the top because they have maybe good connections or they have some exceptional abilities. But most of us have to go and climb step by step. Okay, and that is not always very easy. It sometimes implies that you go a little bit back down, then you go a little bit back up. So it's not so obvious. It also means international, the globe. Okay, so there's a lot of opportunities to travel around, to meet people, know new cultures, and all of this. No, I've been, for instance, to your country several times. I hope I can go back in the future again, because I have some very nice memories of visiting Brazil in the past. So that would be very nice. No, it also means negotiations. Okay, so it means that you have to deal with people, and that is not always easy. It sounds like it's great getting to meet other people and making friendships, but you meet also obviously also sometimes people who don't think like yourself, and then it becomes a little bit more difficult. No, but there's different experiences that I will share with you. I quickly want to ask Gustavo, the animation is not possible, no, with this presentation, I think. Is that because everything appears at the same time? I just want to make sure. I put a little bit of animation in there, but I'm not sure if that is possible.
Yeah, I don't think the system can.
Okay, that's not a problem. Okay, no problem. Just so I know. So where did it all start? Well, I'm from Antwerp, from Belgium. You may want to remember Belgium. That's maybe the small country in Europe that will beat Brazil in the World Cup now in Qatar. So beware, we are ready to win the World Cup. No, I'm just joking. We would like to win the World Cup, but I think it's going to be a difficult one. But anyway, so I'm from Belgium, and Antwerp is the second largest port in the continent, in Europe, and this is my university. So there I studied economics. Okay. And then I had to go through one phase, which is this military service. That was still necessary. You see me in the middle there. I'm clearly recognizable. No, or was I the one on the left or on the right? I'm not sure now anymore. I can't remember. No. Of course, this is not me. I just thought it was a spectacular picture to show the military service, which I did in Germany, part of NATO troops there. And it was a fun experience, but that was just a short step now. Traveling has always been part of my life. I already mentioned that I was in Brazil several times. I traveled to quite a few places, and I'll get back to that. You will hear me repeat very many times traveling, because I think it's really something that enriches you. It makes you a more sort of complete person. You learn to be more tolerant with other people, with other cultures, with other countries, and it's very important you do so. And eventually I ended up where I am now, in Barcelona. Not necessarily for all these reasons. No, I mean, obviously there's a nice beach in Barcelona, there's good food, there's a little bit of partying sometimes, and there's football. And there were also the Olympic Games. You had Olympic Games not so long ago. I arrived even before the Barcelona Olympic Games. You can imagine, that's a long time ago. But those reasons were not the main reasons why I went to Barcelona. Actually, the main reason why I went to Barcelona is because I went to study at ESA Business School, which is one of Europe's top business schools. And I studied there to get an MBA, Master in Business Administration. Okay, so this allowed me again to be in touch already with a lot of different people, a lot of different cultures, because we were all together from a lot of different countries. We were, I can't remember how many nationalities, but it was a very exciting thing to do. And I definitely have no regrets of making that move and finding my place in Barcelona, of course. No. Here, I think it says how many nationalities there are, but anyway, a lot of them. Barcelona, of course, is many more things. For those of you who have been to Barcelona, this is all very recognizable. For those of you who have not yet been to Barcelona, do come and step by, because it's really a wonderful experience now. So there's a lot of things to see. It's known for its culture, its design, for its architecture, for so many things. So definitely it's worthwhile to get into there. But international business, well, it's a mixture of these things. It's not entirely only the big picture, okay? The big picture with the guy in New York with the trolley and the suit, that is maybe what you think is international business. Yes, sometimes it is, sometimes it is not. Sometimes it is maybe a little of fun, like the guy on the left-hand side, but there's a lot of time wasted in airports. There's a lot of time wasted in terrible seats in an airplane and a lot of queuing. Okay, so, but anyway, it's a price you're willing to pay in order to move on in your career and develop international business activities. Now, it's actually, at the end of the day, it's a lot of fun, and I definitely would recommend it. Now, I have to say, since I was hoping that the animation of my presentation would show up, I had a very nice picture, but that's actually disappearing after behind another one, with, how do you call those? The Victoria's Secret parade. Sorry, guys, you're gonna miss that picture. The thing is that the first company where I went to work, it was actually a company in that industry. It was sort of a supplier to the companies like Victoria's Secret. But I left after 3 weeks. I think I still have the record. I have the record in my class of leaving on the first job. The reason was simply because I didn't know what I wanted, and they asked me to do sales and these sort of things. I thought I wanted to do different things, and it was a bit of a disappointment, a mismatch, and eventually I left there. So instead of being involved in something that looks like really as funny and as cool and as fantastic and glamorous as the industry of Victoria's Secret, I ended up here, which is not so cool and not so glamorous, but it's, of course, this was my first real job. Not myself working on a roof, but I worked as an export manager in a building materials business in Spain. That was part of a big multinational, a French multinational. And this already allowed me to travel quite a bit, but this was a very industrial business, very B2B, business to business. So we had to talk a lot to building companies, to architects and these sort of things, but in different parts of the world. The most that I sort of worked with was in Europe and Africa, but it already allowed me to travel quite a bit. And I found it an interesting thing. But of course, sometimes I thought back about Victoria's Secret, and anyway, I missed that. So I just moved on. So I thought eventually I wanted to change. I wanted to move on. I was there a few years. So I moved on, and maybe you think I'm going to go try to get back to something a little bit glamorous. But no, I ended up in the fishing industry. So I don't know, something must have been wrong with my compass, but I definitely choose again something that is not very glamorous. I'm not one of these folks there. I'm not one of these people on the picture, not at all. But the fishing industry, basically, I worked in the largest company in the world making fishing cables, steel cables, steel wire ropes, the ones that are used to pull the nets. Okay, you see that in the bottom picture. And this company literally allowed me to travel around the globe. Okay, and to give you a little bit of an idea, for those of you who like to travel, you're probably going to be sort of jealous, but it allowed me to travel to Japan and China, but also to Australia and New Zealand, but also to Seattle and Los Angeles and Boston. I went to Brazil, and I went to Chile, and I went to South Africa, and I went to Iceland. So I think it's hard to get into more different corners of the world than what I did in that time. So it led me to more than 50 countries, more than 55 countries actually, to be precise. No? So that was an amazing time. A lot of pressure, but very good company, very strong company. And so I stayed there several years. No? Anyway, time to move on, and still thinking about Victoria's Secret, that maybe I should try to get back there. But I don't know, it's really hard to make a move back. Once you're in the industrial thing, maybe it's hard to move back to Victoria's Secret. So I ended up here. Again, not really Victoria's Secret. So I was in logistics. Okay, again, this is not me. I hope you don't recognize me here. That would be really embarrassing. In this job, it was actually interesting because after so much traveling and making use of my language skills, eventually I was able to catch a job that would, let's say, value me as a sales and marketing professional, not only linked to my languages. So in this company, I was actually in charge of the Spanish market. Now, this looks like a step back, but for me as a foreigner in this country, it was important to have that possibility and to be taken as a valid alternative for local candidates. No? So this is a place where I stayed also several years. But eventually what happened is something that may happen to some of you. It actually may happen to many of you at a certain point. And that is that I got tired of having a boss. There are some great bosses. No, just joking. But there are also bosses that are not so good. Okay, so eventually I got tired of having a boss. And so my next step was to start my own business. Okay, and this is actually what I'd like to talk about most in this occasion. No? So basically what I did, I was contacted by two people from the same business school as where I studied, but younger people. And they were thinking about setting up a company in the outsourcing business, externalizing purchasing and production in China. And they were missing a third person. Now, one thing to start a business is when you are comfortable in your own activity, when you are working for a company, although you're not entirely happy, you tend to stick to what you have, okay? One of the reasons why I started this business is not only because I was tired of having a boss and because I found the business idea very attractive, but also because I was fired in the last job, okay? I was asked to leave the company. That caused me a little bit of a shock, because obviously nobody likes to get fired, I can assure you that. But in my case, it was a lucky move because it finally gave me the push to try to start a business. Okay, so sometimes entrepreneurship is linked to jumping in the swimming pool. No, you have to sometimes do that. And so I had to do that in this case as well. I needed this little push. I had been in previous years a few times to China. Now, I imagine that most of you have not been to China, and it's hard to go to China right now. But China is an exciting place, definitely for business. Okay, a lot of things go on there. And whenever I was in China before, I thought one day I'd like to do something with China. So the opportunity came when these two folks had this business plan, and we started working on this company. So we set up a consultancy to help other companies to buy or manufacture in China, to outsource in China, okay? So what we ended up doing, and I actually should be saying what I ended up doing, because the two, they left after a few years when the company was having a difficult moment. I ended up creating S3 Group, okay? S3 stands for Strategic Sourcing Solutions, as you can see on the top. That is a long expression, I know, so we usually call it S3. We have a company a holding company in Hong Kong. The image that you see in the background is Hong Kong. It's actually the homepage of our website. And we also have a trading company in Hong Kong, which is S3 Ambash, the one you see on the right-hand side. And ambash, in case you wonder, it's a bit of a strange word, I know that, but it's a very sort of sentimental detail, because ambash is the abbreviation of Antwerp, Barcelona, Shanghai, which are my 3 favorite cities. So a little bit of an emotional thing here, sentimental thing, but I think as an entrepreneur, you can do these things, no? It's such a strange name that, of course, it was easy to register because nobody else had that name. We also have a company in the UK, and at the end, of course, we created a group, okay, which is S3 Group, Strategic Sourcing Solutions Group. Now, what is this sourcing thing? Because I know that not everybody's familiar with that concept. You may be more familiar with purchasing or buying or procuring, but if we talk about international buying, and particularly linked to low-cost countries like China or other parts of Asia, very often we talk about sourcing. So this is a little bit what we do in the company. We have a number of activities. So we start at the top, whereby we help our customers to define what they want to do. A lot of companies, they realize they need to work with a low-cost country, but they don't know exactly where to start. They don't know what to do. They don't know why exactly they need it. So we help them a little bit with that. We give them consultancy, and we help them to define exactly what they're going to be needing and what may be the following steps. And next thing that we do is we help them completing all the information about the product. That is what we call the RFQ, which stands for Request for Quotation. So this is basically a long list of all the specifications of the product, all the technical details, all the packaging information, all the information related to standards, to quality control, anything that is relevant. It could be related to special requirements. It could be related to minimum volumes, Incoterms, anything you can think of that a purchasing manager needs to have, okay? So all of that information, we help defining that with our customers. Then, of course, there's a stage of supplier selection. And that is the difficult part for a lot of people. It looks actually very easy, because I imagine that quite a few may have heard of the website Alibaba.com. Well, Alibaba.com obviously is an easy way. You can do it basically with your telephone, but it gives you maybe a false, easy impression. Because obviously buying on Alibaba is not like buying on Amazon or something like that. If you buy something on Amazon, you don't like it, you send it back. If you buy something through Alibaba.com, you don't like it, you may have a hard time sending it back. So it's a totally different story. So there's very different ways to try to find suppliers. The ideal way probably is to go directly to that market, to maybe go to trade shows, to meet factories, to meet people who can help you forward, and to see for yourself how these factories work. But that is not so easy either. First of all, because to a country like China right now, you can barely not travel because of the COVID situation. So it's very complicated to go there now. But even if you could, you need to be careful, because it wouldn't be the first time that people visit a factory with which they think they agreed for a visit, but it's not really the factory that they were intending to see. Because maybe the factory they were planning on seeing doesn't look very nice. So the people they're talking to, they will show them another factory, which looks nicer, but it's not the one where your products will be made. So all of these things are a little bit tricky. You can also work with trading companies. They will not show you the factory because that's their secret, but they will help you with anything. And they will probably maybe even speak your language. So it's very practical for them to help you with anything in the process. But of course, your control over the entire thing is very limited. Maybe you can work with institutions. You can work with the Chamber of Commerce. You can work with the embassy, these sort of things. That is also very practical. They can give you a lot of information, but they will go only so far. They will not negotiate with you. They will not hold your hand and walk to the factories. They will not do that. It's not their role. So you will have to do that for yourself. And of course, as I mentioned before, you can work with the internet. There's Alibaba, but there's other places as well. All of this is very practical. I'm not saying they're bad ways. They're very good, but you need to know the limitations of these things, of course. And you can talk to companies like my own, which are consultants who will do the whole thing for you from beginning to the end, a one-stop shop, but we may be a little bit more expensive than the other things that I mentioned before. So if your project is on a limited scale, it may be a little bit an overkill. If your project is very critical and it's an important scale, maybe consultant is the better way. But obviously there is no perfect way. You need to find that for yourself. So that is supplier selection. Once you have a supplier, we go to the bottom part, we go to initial production. So that means prototypes, samples, all these sort of things, whereby you need to test these, you need to check if they're okay, and then you get to the mass production. You get to really the production of the order, and probably the most critical part in this whole process, which is QC, meaning quality control. So you need to check all the quality, the requirements of the product in origin, in China, in Vietnam, in India, in all these places now. So you need to know all of these things very well, because otherwise, once they arrive in your warehouse, it's too late. No? And then the final thing, of course, is you need to get involved in the logistics, because your product is still on the other side of the world, and you need to get it here, you need to get it to your warehouse, and you need to plan ahead. Logistics has been a big problem the last 2 years due to COVID and to a number of things. So the whole supply chain has been a bit of a problem, but things are getting smoother now again. So that is getting better. So planning ahead for the next things is obviously a good way to go. So that would be the whole process of what we do with customers, okay? Dealing with a country like China involves knowing a few things about business protocol, okay? Now, I show a few things here that you may have heard about. The top picture is probably a classic, and it's actually not only in China an important thing. When you meet business people, you want to give your business card and receive their business card with a lot of respect. So you do that with both hands, okay? You give it with both hands and you receive it with both hands and you read it, okay? In the rest of the world, we sometimes tend to almost throw the business card. It's not a good thing to do in China. It's very disrespectful, no? There's many other things. I'm not going to bore you with that, but anyway, this details like gifts. The thing you see on the left-hand picture, there's one particular gift you should never give to a Chinese person. You probably wonder what could that be, no? Well, there's one particular thing you should not give, and that is a clock. Okay, a clock, not a watch. Okay, a clock, the thing you put on a desk or something like that. A clock you should never give to a Chinese person, because in the Chinese language, the character for clock sounds almost identical to the character for death. So if you give somebody a clock, you're telling your days are numbered. It's almost finished for you. It's not a very nice way to say hello to somebody you have never met. So you can't do that. And then the final thing is where people really get very nervous is when they are invited for lunch or dinner, because Chinese food can be a little bit challenging. Obviously, we can have Chinese food in our own countries. I'm sure in Brazil, you can get a lot of good Chinese food, and in Europe as well. But let me give you a little secret. There is no such thing as Chinese food, because China is so big, it has so many people, that it obviously has a lot of very different kitchens. Okay, there's actually 7 different families in China in terms of food, and all of these things are very, very different. Some of it is super spicy, some of it is more sweet and sour, some is more based on cereals, some is more based on rice. So it depends on the region where you are, and things can get very interesting, to use a very euphemistic term, no? Even if you get invited for eating, you can imagine, you see that a little bit on the picture, it's usually one of these round tables in a private room. You don't even get to sit where you want to sit, because the host, the Chinese person that invites you for lunch or for dinner, will be sitting the furthest away from the door. That person will be facing the door. And then if you are the number 1 in your foreign delegation, you need to sit on the right-hand side of that person. Your number two will sit on the other side, and then next to you will sit a local person, and so on. So it's not always very easy, and there's a lot of things to take into account. And by the way, the chopsticks, only use them to eat, for nothing else, okay? Because foreigners tend to do very funny things with chopsticks, and you can't do that. It's very unpolite. Just for eating, nothing else, okay? No drumsticks, for instance. Good. We even moved on at a certain moment, and that was when the financial recession hit quite hard in a lot of parts of the world, including in Spain. Apart from sourcing, we started selling food and beverage in China. So that was wine, olive oil, and a number of other products from different countries, okay? That was me when I was way younger. So that's at a trade show in China. So we did this for about 5 years. And it was a very interesting experience. We set up a specific department with about 8 people who worked very hard on making this a success. We even got so far as organizing festivals in supermarkets, and you see it's a very sort of, it looks a little bit exaggerated, but it is all these things, you know, the cliches. You see flamenco dancing, and anyway, it's part of it. So that was a great experience, but in the end, we ended up with trouble. And I told you already, entrepreneurship is not always about victories and winning, no? We ended up in trouble. We ended up in trouble, particularly with that latest activity, with exports, okay? Why is that? Because, and I go a little bit in clockwise from the top right-hand side, we had some personnel problems. And you see already on the image what I mean. We had people who were not very honest, and that was a big problem, okay? And I'm gonna be honest with all of you. If you would ask me what is the most difficult part in being an entrepreneur, maybe you expected I would say marketing or strategy or finance or operations. No, I think it is human resources. I think it is the most difficult thing. For me, it is still magic. I've hired a lot of people in my life, and most of them were excellent. But I've had a few people who totally disappointed me, and I still do not exactly know why that happened. So it's very hard. It depends. I mean, people were all different. Although, as you will see when I finish this presentation, I have a positive message about this. But my experience has been difficult sometimes, and this also was the main reason why this thing didn't work. The next thing, we had a couple of trust issues with some of our suppliers. Some people with whom we signed contracts to be their exclusive agents in China, they started selling behind our back. So basically the trust went away, okay? They basically went behind the contract. That is very disappointing and something that I did not expect, but it happened. The next thing is we had a few issues with sort of cross-cultural things, but I don't think that's an excuse, because that's what people were paying us to overcome that. Now, if we would have 3 hours more, but I don't think I have a voice left for 3 hours more, so I'm not going to do that. But if we would have 3 hours more, I would tell you a lot of stories about negotiations with retail companies, with supermarkets in China. But then probably tonight you wouldn't sleep, because I would give you nightmares, because they are very difficult to negotiate. They're terrible, very, very, very hard. And for us, it was a big challenge as well. But anyway, that was also not really the biggest problem. And then this gentleman showed up, the one on the left-hand side. And I think by now, probably most of us know who this is. Well, he showed up and he did something very important, which probably for China was a good thing, but it killed a lot of the companies that were active in the food and beverage industry. He started a very strong anti-corruption campaign. He wanted to eradicate corruption from China. And the thing is that one of the main things that Chinese people use in corruption as a gift is not money, but it's products. okay? And a lot of that are imported products, like bottles of wine or these sort of things, okay? So a lot of people in our industry had to close because all of a sudden, all of these products were dangerous, were taboo, and nobody wanted to receive anymore the gifts. So the impact of this was very big. I know of a lot of companies who got bankrupt and who had a hard time, or simply, well, they vanished, no? So we had to make a bold step, and I had to do something that I really find was still in my whole career probably one of the most unpleasant experiences. And it's something that was better shown on the next slide, but due to the animations, you can't really see it. I had to fire people. All 8 of them, they had to go. We were 12 people in total, so 2/3 of my company went. They all went. 4 people were in sourcing and 8 were in export, and they all had to go because all the money that we made in sourcing, it all went in export losses. So that was a really big pity. I think I can say I did the firing in a humane way, in a decent way. I still can speak to all of these people, but I found it a very unpleasant experience. Okay, so it's something that I had to go through. I wish you don't have to do that, but if you have to do it, you have to do it. No? So that is the image that is a little bit hidden behind here. It says you're fired, but anyway, you can't see that anymore. So we went back to basics, and we went back to sourcing. Okay, and actually that went very well. In I think the 4 following years, we multiplied the business by 4. So we really did very well, and we got back into profits, and we grew again a little bit. We're now again 7 people. So that actually moved up quite a bit, and that's really nice. No, so that's a good thing. But it took a little bit of a turnaround. I have to say, at a certain moment when I started firing people, we had liquidity or cash left for 2 months, and that is not very good. That is, then you have a really big problem. Okay, so we had to do that at that point. Well, so what is important to lessons here? Well, in the middle it says unthinkable. Okay, well, sometimes if you start a business, I think most people who start a business, they do not think about how it may go wrong. You can make a business plan and you can foresee everything except that it goes wrong. Okay, and I think, I'm not sure, Gustavo, you will have to explain me that afterwards, but in most entrepreneurship courses, it's all about growth. It's all about building up. It's all about bigger, 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 more people, more resources, more finance. Well, sometimes it's also more trouble. Okay, and that is a little bit unthinkable for most people. So when the unthinkable is right in front of you, you have to do the unthinkable as well. And that means, for instance, in my case, firing people, and not only firing people, but actually stopping an activity that I loved. I loved the export business. It was really a lot of fun. We were at a certain moment representing 30 different companies, 30, wine, olive oil, chocolate, olives, sangria, a lot of things, a lot of different things from 6 different countries. And it was really great to do all these things. It was amazing to go to a supermarket in Beijing or Shanghai and see our products on the shelves. It's an amazing thing. And it's something that is really the result of a lot of hard work. But eventually it didn't work. So if it's something unthinkable coming at you, you need to do the unthinkable and stopping what you really like. There's no point in doing something you like if it ruins you, if it throws away all your money, okay? What is important as well is the thing on the right-hand side. Do not hesitate. If you decide that this is it, go for it, do it, okay? So fire people quickly, out. Do it in a decent way, because life goes in awkward turns. You never know what happens, but do not hesitate. The longer you hesitate, the weaker you become, and that weakness will be exploited by your competitors, maybe by other people in the market, but also by your employees. okay? Maybe the people who maybe will be demanding more because they know you are weak. So do not become weak. Go for it. Do not hesitate. You have to continue explore alternatives because life doesn't stop here. You have to move on. And exploring alternatives may mean a lot of things, and I'll get back to that in a moment, okay? But the most important lesson is that if it doesn't work, move on, okay? Just move on and try to get back to what you know you're good at, which is what we did. We went back to the sourcing, which we never stopped, but it was, again, the focus of the company. So remember, the company, it means S3, Strategic Sourcing Solutions. We went back to sourcing, and that is actually what we're doing, and I think we're good at that, okay? Alternatives, in my case, that was teaching. So I started teaching internationally. Of course, that is not my main activity. My main activity is that I'm an entrepreneur. I'm the owner and CEO of a small pocket multinational, okay? But I also do freelance teaching. And I teach mostly in Spain, of course, sometimes for visiting universities from the USA, as you can see, but I also have taught in the Middle East, like in Saudi Arabia or Bahrain, or for instance, in China. In Belgium, I teach. In France, I teach. It depends where people would like me to teach. And I all enjoy that. I have my own course about global sourcing, as you can imagine. And I enjoy doing that. And it's, for me, a fun complement, the two together, having a business and teaching. So that was, for me, a valid alternative. And it actually allowed me also to get back on my feet. And this actually led me to a TED Talk. I'm not sure if all of you are familiar with TED Talks, but that is a number of events that are organized whereby people can share insights, experiences that they think are worthwhile. This one was organized by a business school in Barcelona, and I was honored to be one of the speakers there. And if you'd like to listen to that, it's in English. You can go to TED.com and you just put in my name and you will see that. It's only 12 minutes, okay? Because TED Talks, per definition, can not be longer than 15 minutes. It basically tells a little bit of a similar story, but in a more summarized version of what I just explained to you today. And then finally, as a wrap up, a couple of lessons, no? The two images on the left, they obviously have to do with traveling. I told you I would bring up traveling a lot, and traveling for me is a very important thing. It enriches me, it allows me to do so many things, and I really love it. I travel really a lot, and I really love it, okay? And I also wanted to make use to show you the newest version of the Belgian passport, which has comics on the inside. You probably recognize Tintin's rocket. It also says 2 + 2 is 5. That makes particularly reference to the team, okay? I'm the first one to admit that S3 is not me. No, S3 is my team, and I'm just part of that, okay? If you want to become an entrepreneur and you want to be bigger than yourself and have a business, you need to be able to put together a team, okay? And that team eventually will be more than just the sum of the elements, okay? My team, I can assure you, and I hope they will listen to this recording, they are the very best team in the world, okay? There's no better team in the world. I have them. If you try to look for some, sorry, I already have them, no? But no, seriously, they're very good. And it's very important that you build up a team, that you communicate well with them, that you delegate things, that you empower them, that you give them opportunities to develop themselves and be strong in their activities, okay? The thing in the middle, though, that's actually the opposite. Sometimes you need to walk alone, okay? When I say alone, it means that sometimes you need to challenge things, you need to dare things where nobody else has been before, okay? That in my case was, for instance, when I had to fire people. That for me was I felt very alone at that moment, although I still had the sourcing team, but I had to do it. So I went for it, no? And then I told you there was a bit of a contradiction coming up. Although I had some bad experiences with some people in my team as well, particularly regarding to the export activity, I think it's very important that you believe in people at all times. If I look back, definitely whatever I've done with other people, the result is definitely very positive. Okay, although sometimes you may have bad episodes, definitely working with people and believing in people is absolutely very, very important, and it will give you in the end the rewards. Okay, so don't forget that, believe in people. And that's it. I thank you for your attention. I wish you good luck. And if you'd like to connect with me, I'm on LinkedIn under the name of Tom Van Der Heyden. In Spain, there's only one Tom Van Der Heyden on LinkedIn, so that should be easy to find.
Thank you very much, Tom. I think it was a very nice hour that we spent here listening to you. I think it's almost an hour, almost 45 minutes now. And there is some questions in the chat. Maybe we can address them now, and then we will talk a little bit more about your experience. Oh, Professor Ayrton, our coordinator here from Entrepreneurism at Univali, he's asking you, what was the biggest lesson?
I'm not sure if I could really pinpoint one, but
It's a hard question, I know.
It's a hard question. I should have actually prepared for it. I'm a little bit upset with myself. I should have prepared for this. But no, what I definitely I think I can answer to this question is that at the end of the day, you have to be able to distance yourself from these things. Okay, and I'm gonna go a little bit. I know it is very fashionable now to show vulnerability, but that's not the reason why I'm gonna say this. Okay. But at a certain moment, and you will see that if you watch the TED talk, I stress that, at a certain moment, the whole episode of being almost bankrupt, it affects literally everything. It not only affects you, it affects your team, because everybody gets very nervous, okay? But it also affects your family, and it affects your health, okay? And nothing is worth that. Nothing is worth that. So at a certain moment, you need to distance from yourself from that. I had some really bad episodes health-wise, because it bites on you. I have 2 daughters, but I can assure you at a certain moment, your business becomes your 3rd child, okay? And you don't want to lose that, okay? So you fight very hard. And for me, giving up export was a very painful experience, but you have to do it. So as I mentioned before, you have to move on, and it's not worthwhile to stick to it. As a second lesson, I realized that it was unfair that I thought about letting everything go and closing everything. But I thought it would be unfair for the people in the sourcing department to also lose their jobs, because it was not their fault. Okay, so I tried again. And if I say that I have the best team now, that is also because I know that all of these people are very thankful. Okay, they realize that. We don't have to say that to each other. We know that. I mean, and they also pay the price for that. But we moved on as a team, and that makes us very close now. But I definitely think time to move on is a very important lesson.
That is a very good answer, actually, because companies are not definite, right? You don't default your company in only one activity. You have to learn and grow and do more, or even sometimes do less, right? So you have to learn with the market, and who knows, maybe next year you go back to export again. You don't know, the market will say that, right?
Absolutely. I mean, for those people who visit maybe the website of our company, groups3.com, you will maybe encounter a funny thing, because if you look at the activities of the company, it shows 3 activities. No, it shows sourcing, export, and then training and consulting. And it gives the impression that all of them are equally important. While the vast majority of our income is sourcing, of course, and export is very little now. But I leave that on there. We leave that on there because we have a lot of experience in these things. Okay, we learned a lot there, and we are able to go again if needed, but we just decided to drop it at that moment. Okay, absolutely. It's an experience.
And that's the way the life goes on, right? Sometimes you win,
Totally.
sometimes you lose, and life goes on. There's another question here, Tom, from Bruna. She's saying, Tom, do you help companies enter sourcing in Spain, or can you be a consultancy for any country?
Okay, that's a good question as well. We actually have a network of people we work with because we get a lot of very different inquiries. Okay, we are active with on Google and these sort of things, so we get a lot of different inquiries, sometimes from other parts of the world, and sometimes people indeed want to enter Spain, or want to buy things in Spain, or want to sell in Spain, which originally was not sort of the main focus. But we developed a network of people that can do these jobs, yes. So obviously, I would not say we do everything, but yes, we have the capacity to give solutions to most of these things, yes. So if people have interest in things related to the Spanish market, we can do that, yes.
So Bruna, if you want to export or sourcing something in Spain, Tom is here for you. Just
absolutely.
Go there, reach him, and maybe he can help you.
Right. And there was actually another part of the question related to any country. Well, I wouldn't say any country. I think that would be not realistic. But for instance, we do get also quite a bit of inquiries for the rest of Europe. And indeed, we have a number of people who work with us on a freelance basis who can actually provide solutions related to other European markets. Again, since Europe is so many different countries, I wouldn't say every country, but like Germany, France, UK is now much more difficult because of Brexit, but the Benelux, Belgium, Netherlands, those places. So yes, I'm not sure if I'm gone now.
No, you're here. Claudia, do you have any comments?
I do. Tom, thank you so much for this lecture. It's amazing to hear your experience. And I would like to make you some questions because I know a little bit more about your case. We've been working together in a case study. And I would like to ask you, you have worked with lots of Spanish companies that were trying to put their products in China, right? I'd like to hear from you about your perceptions on their main strengths, but also the main challenges they faced. Oh, he dropped.
His internet connection, I think it's gone lost. So
he'll be back in a moment.
Yeah.
Do you have any other questions?
Yeah, there is another questions in the chat, so we can continue when he's.
I'll ask him some details about his experience regarding, for example, human resources and the challenges that the companies he represented faced in the Chinese market. But I'll wait for him to come back and then we can continue.
Yeah, definitely. Então, pessoal, o Tom deu uma caidinha na internet, mas a gente já volta a conversar, né? Ele está já se comunicando conosco. E provavelmente já vai regressar. Mas espero que vocês estejam gostando. A experiência dele é muito vasta, né? É muita experiência nesse mercado aí. E como vocês podem perceber, assim como nós aqui no Brasil passamos por esses momentos, né, de tensão, de mudança de mercado, passamos por essas intempéries, essas externalidades, né? Eles também passam, né, Cláudia?
Sim, o que é interessante também, Gustavo, é essa característica do empreendedor, né? De se reinventar e de aprender com os próprios fracassos. Então, o Tom passou de fazer sourcing da China a exportar, teve uma série de problemas, aprendeu muito com essa experiência, voltou a fazer sourcing com toda essa bagagem que ele tem e hoje ele está muito mais preparado para enfrentar qualquer outro tipo de instabilidade que venha acontecer e tem uma bagagem agora de conhecimento experiencial para poder novamente empreender da Espanha para fora, né? Eu também devo perguntar para ele sobre a percepção dele do mercado brasileiro, porque ele tentou fazer negócios no Brasil e considerou o mercado muito complexo, e nós somos o mercado mais complexo do mundo pelo TMF Group, né, pelo índice de complexidade, e normalmente nós olhamos para fora, mas não olhamos para nós mesmos aqui. E isso tem muito a ver com a capacidade empreendedora que nós temos na nossa região, no nosso país, para as nossas empresas, né? O nosso contexto também influencia na maneira como as pessoas empreendem e na capacidade de se manter no negócio, né? Inclusive em negócios internacionais.
Não, definitivamente. Eu acho que tudo isso que a gente está conversando aqui é muito interessante para que nós também tenhamos, Cláudio, além de tudo isso que tu falou, né, uma visão diferente, né? Porque nós às vezes somos muito self-centered, né? Muito autocentrados. A realidade brasileira, os negócios como se faz no Brasil. Mas, na verdade, lá fora eles já têm uma percepção diferente, né? Eu acho que eles evoluíram da gente, em que sentido? Por sermos um país ainda em desenvolvimento, né, vamos dizer assim, para sermos bem educados, nós ainda empreendemos por necessidade. Poucos deles empreendem por necessidade e muitos deles empreendem por vocação. E aí a relação com os negócios é diferente, né? Mesmo com o propósito de vida, né? O Tom mesmo, na fala dele a gente percebe. A gente consegue encontrar nele um desejo e uma vontade muito grande por viajar o mundo, explorar e conhecer novas culturas, e como ele conseguiu associar e aliar isso aos seus negócios, né? Então, muito interessante.
Nós também temos, desculpa, Gustavo, nós também temos que colocar isso em contexto, né? Posso falar?
Claro, claro.
Nós temos que colocar isso em contexto.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we're just finishing talking about something, Tom, and then we'll be back with you. Thank you.
Okay.
O Tom partiu para empreender a partir da Europa, onde é muito mais fácil estar fora do seu país, né? Nós estamos num país extremamente fechado, nós representamos muito pouco do comércio internacional, com uma área muito vasta, territorial, e de costas para os nossos vizinhos, né? A maioria das empresas brasileiras iniciam seu processo de internacionalização para os nossos vizinhos, mas nós sequer sabemos falar espanhol. Então, nós estamos muito fechados em nós mesmos e ficamos olhando o tempo todo para fora, para o norte, né? E, às vezes, esquecemos de fazer uma análise de como é que nós estamos aqui dentro. And by the way, I would like to ask you, Tom, from your experience, what is your perception about the Brazilian market? You had you have been in the country and yes, you have tried to make business with us, but you told me that you felt like it's too complex. Would you like to share it with us?
Well, obviously, I think my experience is, I wouldn't say purely anecdotal, it's more than anecdotal. I think I've been in Brazil 4 or 5 times, I'm not entirely sure. And I visited several parts of the country. And the main idea was to set up, to not only sell the food and beverage products into China, but also into Brazil. Okay, since we had the contracts with the suppliers, and they were happy about getting introduced in China, we proposed them to make the contract wider and to also include the Brazilian market. But that turned out to be very difficult. Okay, our experience, and obviously, I hear other people in Europe often commenting the same thing, but at the same time, I also know other businesses are successful. So I don't like to generalize things. In our case, definitely we found it difficult for, let's say, administration and bureaucratic reasons. It's in a number of instances, I found it beyond complicated, very, very complicated, and a lot of regulations. And then we also thought about, at a certain moment, hiring somebody on the payroll, to have somebody with a salary. We only worked with people as agents. But even paying an agent was complicated with a transfer because of certain controls, I understand. But then when we looked into the possibility of having somebody really fixed on the payroll for us, I was very, very surprised by the taxes. The tax levels were, I didn't understand. I thought they were joking. I thought this can't be right, but I understand now they were right. Okay, so it's a different way how things are calculated, and I mean, I've been around in the world and I understand why these things exist, more or less. But they become, for somebody from the outside, they become a very big obstacle. Okay, and at the end of the day, we just decided to stop it. I mean, I remember an anecdote which, I don't know if that is maybe anecdotal, but I think I've heard other people saying similar things. We were at a certain moment in negotiations with a very large importer of wines in Brazil. I prefer not to name the company, but it's the largest importer of Bordeaux wines in Brazil. They have a lot of shops around the country. It's a very big company. And since we had a wide range of particularly Spanish wines, and some of them from areas they didn't have in their catalog, they were interested in receiving one particular type of wine. So they asked us in the meeting, they said, you should send us a sample of that particular wine. And we were told specifically not to send it to their office, but to send it to the home address of our agent. And then he would bring it in, because that would be easier for customs. I found that a very strange thing, but other people have confirmed that to me, that these sort of shipments sometimes get stuck in customs. I don't understand exactly why, but I found it, if you allow me that expression, and I please, I'm not judging, okay? I'm just explaining my experience. I found it sad that for such a simple thing as sending a bottle of wine to somebody who says, I'm interested in buying from you, you have to already do a little bit of a sideway, a deviation to get to your destination for something as simple as this.
Yes, and this is the institutional environment we have here in Brazil. We have the formal environment, which is also very complex, but we also have the informal environment, which makes you to operate in a very specific way, the Brazilian way of doing business, right? And it's very, very difficult to learn. And I hope, Tom, you have other chance to come to Brazil and visit us and learn a little bit more about our reality, and maybe we can discuss it with a little bit of
absolutely.
wine and caipirinha.
Absolutely. No, I mean, to be honest, I mean, business in Brazil is on my professional bucket list. So I still wanna do this. No, as they say in Spanish, tengo la espina clavada. I want to be successful in this. Yeah, una asignatura pendiente. It's a pity, because we tried very hard. I spent a lot of money on these trips. I did a lot of efforts, and eventually we had to give up. We even had some small sales conventions with people who were interested, and eventually we couldn't do it. And I found it very frustrating. I found it really a pity, but I'm sure it should be possible. So I'd like to do that. Yes, absolutely.
And also a constraint for our companies to internationalize and to survive in the market. So it's a very, very difficult environment to be an entrepreneur. So people who open a business and stay in the business, stay in the market, they are heroes because of the Brazil cost.
Totally.
It's amazing. So it's very interesting to discuss it too, right? We have a question, Tom, from Juliana. Maybe you can make it, Gustavo?
Okay, I'm getting there. Just a minute.
You know her? She participated on the Canadian.
Yeah, right. The question is there. I work for an export promotion organization. I help SME companies in how they may sell their products abroad. What advice you could give for a first experience negotiation with a foreigner?
Right. Okay. Well, that's a very good question as well, because this is something in which a lot of people, if they are unprepared, they end up with a bad experience, and then they don't understand what went wrong. No, I think first of all, of course, it depends. It's very different. What foreigner? I think if it's not the same thing. The first experience maybe dealing with somebody in the US or somebody in Europe or Latin America, or dealing with Asia. It's a totally different context. And even then, in a country like China, to get back to China, for instance, as I talked about mostly, it's a very big difference dealing with somebody who's from Shanghai or somebody who's more farther away, okay, from the coast, and who has less experience with foreigners. No, I always say in business protocol, I teach courses on business protocol in China, but if you deal with people in the coastal areas in China, like Shanghai, I don't say that you don't have to worry about business protocol. Yes, you should. But if you make a mistake, it's not the end of the world. People will not sort of act in a strange way. They know that for you it's difficult. For you, all these rules are complicated, okay? And it makes you very nervous, okay? But if you are dealing with people who are less accustomed to dealing with foreigners, it may be a little bit more challenging, no? Now, as a general answer to this question from Juliana, I think the big secret is two things, okay? On the one hand is being well prepared. In the case of China, I've seen that way too many times, people who go totally unprepared, who have absolutely no idea, and no idea about who they're going to meet, what's the status of a certain person, what's the importance of the business they're going to talk to, what is relevant about that region, about anything. They don't go well prepared. The only thing they know is about their own business, and they think they are the center of the world. Okay, so they only think that what they will explain, the rest will listen. Well, that's not okay. So you have to prepare yourself. And the second part is, and it sounds maybe very obvious, but again, I've seen it in many times in the wrong way, is always being respectful. Okay, and that counts much more even I think in Asia than in other parts of the world, where respect is still a very, very important thing. I think it should be everywhere, but it's a key thing in places like China. If you start in an aggressive way and show little respect for culture or tradition, you will totally start with the wrong foot, and it may be the end of the conversation. So I've seen these things. I've seen these things for myself, and it doesn't take a lot of preparation. I'm not saying that people should take a master's course in business protocol. No. I mean, just inform yourself a little bit. Maybe listen to the people who accompany you and who know more about it, and prepare yourself a little bit. Okay. So, like the thing I mentioned with the business cards, it's a silly detail, but I can't remember now in Brazil what is the habit there, but definitely in Europe, and particularly in the US, if the table is very big, people slide the business card over the table, no? And nobody will say, oh, what do you do? It's nothing wrong. You cannot do that in China. It's very offensive. It's very offensive. So it's just showing a little bit of respect for the other person. It goes a long way. Okay, so definitely those two things: prepare yourself and be respectful. I think it's a very important thing.
Thank you very much, Tom, for your answer. I think Juliana will be very pleasant. We will be very satisfied with your answer. It was a complete answer. I think cultural-wise, some little details are very important. So you have to pay attention and research.
And you have to study about the culture, because we can learn other cultures. So it's not only learning by doing; it's learning before you go.
As an anecdote to prove my point, because maybe I gave just a generic answer, but as an anecdote that I remember very well, we once had a customer for the sourcing business who who didn't want to start dealing with us, ordering products until he literally saw the factory. So I said, okay, we go to China, don't worry. And I already found his behavior during the trip not very respectful. And by the time we were about to fly back, we were going, I'm not sure if any of you is familiar with that, but we were going from Shanghai Center to the Shanghai airport by using the train of magnetic levitation, the maglev train, which is pretty unique. And it goes, I mean, it's a small track, but it goes to 430 kilometers per hour. And it's a pretty kind of a fun experience, no? And so we came off that train in the airport, and I said to the guy, well, this is pretty cool, no? I hope you enjoy that, no? And he looked back at me and he said, yeah, the day that China becomes important, it will be really amazing. And I thought, you haven't understood a thing. China is already killing your business, and now you're saying this. He came totally unprepared. He had no idea. Even though I tried to feed him information and try to soften the sharp edges in the meetings, in this century, nobody can say anymore, oh, the day that China will become important. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit too late to realize that, you know.
The need for a global mindset.
Yeah, definitely. Amanda has the last question for us this night, so let me exhibit here. Tom, regarding the logistics you commented earlier, does your company hire trading companies, for example, to take care of this part, or it's also done by your people?
Well, both, because we have somebody in our team who does logistics, and that person happens to be an ex-customer service manager of one of the very big shipping companies. And I truly can say that since we have that person in the team, our logistics capacities are way better. She's very much on top of this whole thing, but of course we have our limitations. So we work a bit both ways. If we can do it internally, we do it internally. But a lot of times we do it with external partners. And I must add that in many cases, our customers themselves, they organize logistics. Okay, so for those of you familiar with Incoterms, mostly we work in FOB Shanghai, FOB Hong Kong, these things, or Shenzhen. And then it's our customers who take care of logistics and the imports and everything. But sometimes we work with external partners, sometimes we do it ourselves. So it's not a fixed policy. If we can do it internally, we do it internally. Yeah.
Thank you. Tom, Claudia, I cannot thank you guys enough for this lecture this night, for the discussion. I think it's very important for us and our students to learn a little bit more of what you do, Tom, over there in your company, and the ideas you brought here today for us about the importance of the culture and the structure of a company, and the way we have to think about how we do business, actually, because that's it's simple as that. It's very amazing because we are doing similar things here in Brazil, but we are far from doing what you guys are doing in a sense of thinking, right? It's a mindset thing. We have a huge bureaucracy in Brazil, some things that don't work well with other countries, for instance, and we are dealing with that, but we have a long way until we get there where you guys are.
Well, I thank you for these comments, but I definitely would like to add that with initiatives like this week, and with all the activities that you do in terms of entrepreneurship and international entrepreneurship, I think these are definitely the steps in the right direction. So I think you're definitely a big part of the solution here. So great initiative.
Thank you very much, Claudia.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you, Bruna, Amanda, and Juliana, who have participated in the debate. We have here, Tom, a unit from a department from the federal government to qualify to help companies to internationalize. So Juliana is working in this unit here in Univali, and if you have the chance to come, you will know it and know a little bit about the particularities of those companies that are trying to internationalize, and the context where they are inserted, and how and the way they internationalize compared to what you have found, for example, with Spanish companies going to China, and the challenges that they have faced and so on. It's a pity we don't have more time, but I'm sure that we'll have other opportunities to have you with us, Tom. Thank you so much. Okay. It's very late there in Spain.
No problem. It was my pleasure.
Thank you so much, and we'll be in touch.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you very much, all of you. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Claudia, thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.
Então, pessoal, é isso aí, né? Acho que nós aprendemos bastante aqui essa noite. Deixa eu trazer a professora Cláudia de volta aqui para a gente encerrar, né? Acho que nós aprendemos bastante essa noite aqui com o Tom sobre essa experiência dele aí nos negócios internacionais. Empreender realmente é muito complicado em qualquer lugar do mundo, né? É possível, mas é complicado. Ainda mais quando a gente empreende num negócio internacional, né, professora Cláudia? Mais desafios, né?
E aprendendo com fracasso, né? Nós normalmente não temos literatura, ou temos muito pouca literatura sobre fracasso. Eu tenho um colega que trabalha especificamente com fracasso.
Uhum.
E o que se aprende a partir do erro, né? E na educação nós usamos muito isso, a pedagogia do tombo, né? A gente aprende muito com o erro. O que a gente errou e tentou depois consertar, nós nunca vamos esquecer. Então é muito importante olhar para esses desafios e essas situações que ele comentou aqui como uma oportunidade de aprendizado. Nós estamos, eu e o professor Gustavo Belling, nós estamos escrevendo um caso para ensino com essa experiência do Tom, que foca em como ele se reestruturou, como ele aproveitou esses ativos que ele acabou construindo, ativos relacionais e experiência e conhecimento experiencial para sobreviver e se reinventar enquanto empresa. Então, espero que em breve nós estejamos trabalhando com isso aí em sala de aula.
Isso é maravilhoso, né, professora? Porque, de fato, a gente precisa aprender com esses casos, né? Para os nossos alunos aqui é fenomenal. E para a gente também. Às vezes a gente acha que conhece muita coisa, mas cada pequeno caso que a gente conversa é um novo mundo de conhecimento e novas oportunidades de insights aí para a gente fazer as nossas pesquisas, com certeza. Professora Cláudia, muito obrigado pela sua participação aqui.
Muito obrigada pela oportunidade, Gustavo. Fiquei muito contente com o convite. Desejo muito sucesso para vocês.
Com certeza. É incrível ter você aqui, professora. Assim, a gente já admira o seu trabalho, né? Com certeza. E também aí o que vocês têm feito enquanto grupo, enquanto conjunto, né? No PMPG e no PPGA. Um trabalho belíssimo aí. Então, pessoal...
Estamos à tua disposição.
Obrigado, viu, professora? Pessoal, aqui do lado, tá aqui do lado tem a frequência para vocês validarem aí, ganharem o seu certificado, para aqueles que forem alunos da Univali. Para aqueles que não são alunos da Univali, se inscreveram também é da mesma forma. Abre o celular aí, lê o QR Code, isso vai levar vocês lá direto para o sistema ELISA aqui da Univali, né, no sistema de inscrição de eventos, para que vocês possam fazer a sua validação, tá? Pessoal, era isso mesmo. Amanhã a gente continua com mais atividades. 9h30 da manhã a gente tem Igor Drude aqui falando de tendências de inovação e empreendedorismo. 10h45 da manhã, o professor Petrelli falando aí da importância do UX, né, do User Experience, para a criação e o desenvolvimento de novos negócios. Vamos criar uma startup? Tudo bem. Estou pensando na minha ideia, estou apaixonado por ela. Mas e o usuário? Para quem que eu estou criando esse negócio, né? A gente vai conversar sobre isso aí com o professor Petrelli. E aí, às 14 horas, a gente tem aqui o Luiz Gustavo Rosa para falar de transformação digital. Onde é que a gente se encaixa nisso tudo? Afinal de contas, nós estamos aqui no meio digital, eu e a professora Cláudia conversando com o professor Tom, que está lá em Barcelona, né? E nós estamos aqui também para usar esses meios para negociar, não é verdade? Então, vamos aproveitar isso aí, começar a internacionalizar ideias, processos, projetos, para que a gente possa levar os nossos produtos, de fato, para outros países e alcançar aí voos maiores. E de noite, 7 horas da noite, a gente tem aqui presencial na Univali, o 5º prêmio Univali de inovação. Entra lá, né? Muito legal, então, vocês estão convidados a vir. E lá no nosso Metaverso a gente tem mais informações. Professora Cláudia, novamente, muito obrigado.
Obrigada.
Pessoal, Um abraço e até mais.